evening. Welcome to Community Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that hopefully help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. Here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello.
How
We
you
got
doing,
some,
man?
we got some practical stuff to tell you, including all the AI stuff in the second half of the show.
hmm
But the first story I want to give is really persuasive on the question of should you get vaccinated for COVID if there's another pandemic. And the data, which comes from some fairly high-powered university professors who got access to census data, and everybody's party registration is public record, and put them together. It turned out during the pandemic, there was a large excess death rate for Republicans and Democratic registered voters in Florida and Ohio, and also much higher for Republican districts than for Democratic
hmm
districts. The data that I looked at suggests you were 20% more likely to die of anything, including heart attacks and cancer and so on. So it's not just the effect of the virus, but 20% more likely to die if you didn't have a vaccine. That corresponds to lots of other reasons to think so. It clearly did work, but there's still a whole lot of people who didn't want to take the vaccine. And here's the data. A lot of them died of it.
hmm
Now, this data was made by looking at Republicans versus Democrats. And I think it's a little bit distorted because most Black people are Democrats. And many Black people, I think it's safe to assume, avoided vaccination. Am I right in saying that?
Well, many did, but many took it as well. I don't really have any statistics on that. I would say more Republicans resisted than Black folks resisted. But there was some a big resistance. Black folks have a historical disinclination to follow health advisories of the U.S. government. Going back to the Tuskegee experiments and other things where they have experimented upon us with various drugs without our knowledge. So Black folks are historically very skeptical
So
of medical advice from the government.
So you should make your own decision, but this is one piece of data you should consider. The vaccines clearly made a significant difference.
hmm Now, Dave, this study of the disparate death rates between Republicans and Democrats, it focused on the time period after the vaccines were available. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go up to the current when the death rate is fortunately significantly down. There's
hmm
still a lot of people who are afraid about what's going to happen in the fall. In the fall, you spend more time indoors, which means
hmm
you're more likely to be in contact with other people. That's why every year we have a flu season happening in the fall and early winter, because people are just more exposed to other people, and hence
hmm
the vaccines could spread.
Right.
It may very well be happening this year. I don't think they've officially put out what this year's flu vaccine and COVID vaccine are going to be, which I don't think they put out the COVID, but what they've been talking about is a new version of the vaccine based on the strains of COVID and the flu that is going around this year. They both mutate very fast. They're RNA viruses and hence very prone to mutation. So every year you get a different vaccine for a different set of strains of flu, and the same looks like it's going to be officially done for COVID. They've been talking about it, but I haven't heard an official announcement.
Now,
So I'm going to get
have there been any, I don't know how to quite ask the question, but, you know, given the history 3 years in now, um, are the symptoms and the casualties anywhere near as high if you were to get COVID, say going into this fall? I mean, is it much more mild? Is it more like the flu in terms of its impact, or is this something that we should still be considering as potentially lethal? What do you think?
There is still a significant death rate. The death rate always has been higher with older people. So some of the recommendations on the vaccine is everybody with a condition like diabetes
Hmm.
or everybody over 60. But if you're young and mostly healthy, it's not apparently not as important. But this is not my expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find somebody as we get towards the fall to come in and give our listeners and viewers an update on what the current thinking is about that.
And it's probably good to get a physician who's active in the community and it's more than just the research physicians, which is
Yeah.
what the newspapers look at and
Mm-hmm.
what I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, but I'm going to get a vaccine. I strongly recommend it to everybody, but you have to make your own decision.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, big in the news, the Supreme Court has outlawed affirmative action in a case that included Harvard. This is not the place to debate whether that's right or wrong. I'm strongly in favor of affirmative action. But there's something to know about. One of the key affirmative actions, not part of affirmative action programs, is if you have a lot of money, you are more than twice as likely to get admitted to the top universities. Work,
Surprise. I'm shocked, Dave. I'm shocked. I can't believe that. How does that work? Is that a revelation, Dave?
we all knew it, but we could never prove it. The research came from three Harvard professors who had data from some of the universities and from the Census Bureau, and their number was 2.2 times as much if you're in the top one
How
tenth
many times?
percent,
Say that again, Dave. How many times?
a little more than twice.
Wow.
My guess is that it's even higher. What they did is they got the SAT scores from some of the universities
Mm-hmm.
and saw that people with the same SAT scores in a different income bracket were much more likely to get admitted 2.2 times. But people with a whole lot of money also have access to the best private schools, access to the best tutors, have no trouble affording prep courses for the SATs.
Right.
That all of that adds up to it's probably not 2 times, it's 3 or 4 times. Did we know about it? Well, my mother a long time ago told me that her uncle got her cousin into Harvard by putting $2 million to a gym at Harvard. She had some very rich uncles.
Yeah, that'll do it.
That's a family legend. I can't tell you for sure whether
Mm-hmm.
it's true, but I'm pretty sure that kind of thing happened a whole lot. It's very hard to know just what is going to happen with the end of affirmative action. 9 out of 10, I would bet, of the people who are doing admissions to the major universities want more Black people, Latinos, in those universities to be more representative. So that bias may very well show up in who actually gets submitted, even if it's not a formal program.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take a few years to see that data. But when they ended affirmative action in one state university system, the number of Black students in the top universities in that state went down dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, actually, I was about to say that affirmative action helps people who, by and large, are poorer, have inferior high schools, don't have the preparation, so they don't score as high. They also mostly don't have enough time and money to get into things like extracurriculum volunteer research projects in major hospitals, the kind of thing that a lot of people do in order to get a preference in administration. But as I was about to say that, I remembered that I've read that places like Harvard, Columbia, a disproportionate share of the minorities that they admit are coming from solidly middle class and higher families. So that the son of an ambassador for Jamaica has a much better chance of getting into Harvard than the daughter of a poor family in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure quite how that's all going to play out. I do remember when the CEO of US West, his name was Trujillo, said very publicly he would not got into the university he did and not gotten the advantages that led him to be the CEO of a massive telephone company if he hadn't been selected due to affirmative action.
Mm-hmm.
So it has had some effect.
Mm-hmm.
Not that racism is over in our country.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, time out 1 second, please. Hold on. Okay.
Another story about how racism in one form or another is still very strong. Let me read it to you. Rona Wong has a strong curiosity for AI generated images. She's a recent graduate of MIT, has written about the negative impacts of technology. She's even found that in some cases it can produce very odd images of people. But she experimented with another AI program last week and discovered a bigger concern. Seeking a new profile picture for her LinkedIn account, Wong sought the help of Playground with AI, an AI image generator. Wong, an Asian American woman, uploaded a photo of herself smiling in a maroon-covered shirt. She asked the AI to make the photo look more professional. Stu, what do you think they did? Or what do you think the AI did?
Probably soften her Asian features.
How
And
about the image was a white woman with brown brunette hair.
wow. Wow.
And that's a known kind of bias that the best people in AI are trying to work around and eliminate. The way AI is developed is it looks at literally billions of pictures and text, most from the web. And it says, this is what we see as a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And if the pattern of professional people were more likely to be blue-eyed blondes, well, if you want to be a professional look, it'll turn you into a blue-eyed blonde.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know how you change that algorithm, Dave, when the algorithm is simply following society.
And you don't change that algorithm. You don't simply follow society, and you design your algorithms not to do things like that to the
Mm-hmm.
best that you can. And my gut, we've talked on the show a number of times about how black faces have traditionally not been as well recognized as white faces.
Mm-hmm.
There are just not as many black faces in the population, and even fewer in the image data sets. I know that the people at places like Amazon and Google who are doing the face recognition are very aware of it and are trying to tune their algorithms to do better. And my guess is they're at least half successful in improving things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no data out
Yeah.
there.
Of course, the irony of all this, Dave, is that white people are really a minority on planet Earth. Brown and black skin and dark skin and yellow skin people are by far the vast majority of folks on the planet. Yet we are not represented in the media and in the image databases that the AI learning models search through.
Or on the internet. I
Mm-hmm.
have some numbers for you. There
Okay.
are more Africans on the internet than the United States has people.
Hmm.
There are more Indians and Chinese each on the internet than the total population of the United States and Western Europe. But that's not what we see on the internet,
Right.
I assure you.
Mm-hmm.
Another piece of machine aided discrimination. I don't know that they use machine learning. They may have gotten a database from somewhere. But the hotels and AI are currently having a massive strike on, and they're hiring strike breakers.
You say the hotels are?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Many of those hotels are using a program called InstaWork. InstaWork, which is an active use, hiring at the hotels in Los Angeles, has built into it a tool that lets you eliminate anybody who's been observed on the picket line for the strike.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
so if you're out there picketing the Hilton and you apply for a job at the W may be using this software to
Mm.
make sure you don't get hired.
Now let me, Dave. You said that the picket line photos, is it pickets for hotels specifically or any pickets?
I don't think, I assume it's hotels specifically, but I didn't notice it in the article.
Mm-hmm.
It's sure not to be accurate. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how they came up with that database of who was on. But the union has filed a
Mm-hmm.
grievance with the NLRB about systematic discrimination against union supporters.
Wow.
Whether they win on that or not, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
How much time do we have before our
We got
break?
about 4 minutes before the break. I know we're gonna have got a lot to talk about on the AI side, but which we will do after the break. But before we do that, I did want to mention a story that I ran across in the Times, I guess earlier this week, just yesterday, about lawsuits trying to rein in some of the hate speech on social media. And in particular, the two lawsuits filed by victims of murder, racist massacres in Buffalo. You might remember just recently, I don't have the number in front of me, but I think it's 10 people, all of them black, were killed at the Buffalo massacre. And so families have come up and are suing Google and Meta and blaming them for helping to fuel some of the hate speech. As you know, David, we've talked about it a lot, that the algorithms tend to like reinforce the stuff that you're already looking at and that you're already interested in. So if you're interested in anti-black or anti-Muslim or anti-brown, you're going to see
Let's
more
put
and
it
more of
more
that stuff.
clearly. If you are a racist, you are more likely to get racist postings on
Okay,
social media.
there you go. There you go. So they're being sued, Meta and Google, and of course you and I have talked. We're telecom folks, so we know about Section 230 of the Telecom Act, which essentially protects social media platforms for with a free speech pass, if you will, so that they are not liable for any of the speech that others put on their networks, on their platforms. And clearly there's been, since that regulation was enacted, I think that was 1997 or 98, if I'm not mistaken, Dave, when that went into effect. So, fast forward 25 years, it's a much more insidious and widespread problem than just a few chat rooms and that kind of stuff that was going on back in the late 90s that this kind of legislation was looking at protecting. So, you're not kicking around. Is that possible? Is it possible for these big platforms to somehow mediate or mitigate the way that this algorithms channels more hate speech to hate speech enthusiasts?
It certainly can do it 80, 90%. It's never going to be perfect.
Hmm.
These things are wildly subjective. And every proposal to censor the internet, the image generating programs, the AI, is limited by the fact that there's a lot of marginal cases. Is somebody taking a picture of their 6-year-old daughter or 12-year-old daughter in a very skimpy outfit producing child porn? Or are they sending a baby picture to their mother-in-law?
Hmm.
Those things are no obvious way to pick apart. And in fact, it has come up a professional photographer who was specialized in photographs of her children as they were growing up and has had exhibited in art galleries the photos of her nude children, was blocked from social media sent with those same photos.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're not anymore blocking out the Manet, yes, Manet, not Monet, uh, pictures of very dramatic and sexualized nudes, which I've seen. They hang in the Paris Museum and were a scandal back in their day. And when they started blocking that out, or blocking out the statue by Michelangelo of David, ready to use his slingshot. Was it a slingshot or javelin in the statue? I don't remember. There was enough outroar that they tried to not filter out well-known art images.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a professional but not very well-known photographer. These were accepted by the art world as artistic images. But she got blocked on several social media platforms. Mm-hmm. You make your judgment about
okay, well, you know, the sexuality, that's one area, but what about the hate speech and the violent speech? I mean, to me, that's, I won't say more egregious, but it's very different from the sexual abuse. Is there any way to look at that language and have the algorithms not feed into it and just amplify it?
Let me give you an example. Say my grandfather tweeted out, Adolf Hitler is wrong when he said in Mein Kampf, and it goes with an extensive quotation from Mein Kampf. Is that hate speech? Or is that my grandfather, the rabbi, making a point about what Adolf Hitler got wrong?
Mm-hmm.
There are always going to be marginal cases that there's no clear definition, which is one of the reasons why there are armies of thousands, probably tens of thousands of people, many poor Africans who can be hired cheap, who actually look at the photos and the comments that are objected to decide. Because the algorithms are 80% right, and they may not be that good, that still is a heck of a lot coming. Mm-hmm. There were literally hundreds of thousands of hateful statements and child pornography uploaded every day to a site like YouTube. If the algorithms miss 10%, that's tens of thousands a day. Yeah.
So from where you sit, Dave, you don't see any change in Section 230 that protects the platforms?
Yeah, there's a big change. The change is happening because the Europeans, by and large, especially the Germans, have come to the opposite decision. Mm-hmm. And have threatened fines against Google and Facebook if they don't do a decent job of filtering of 5% of their worldwide gross. You're talking.
Well, that's a big number.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
Yeah. And what's going to happen is that YouTube is going to put in more effective filters that will also filter out more legitimate comments and pictures. Is this right or wrong? I'm totally unclear. I used to be an absolutist, First Amendment all the way. With all this hate speech I've been seeing, I don't know what I think anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. It's difficult. And I know a lot of Black folks have been censored for writing pro-Black stuff on the internet. For some reason, some of the algorithms have labeled that as hate speech because you are promoting Blackness and Black issues, which is crazy.
Let me give you another example right out of the headlines. What if I went on Facebook and posted, slavery had some beneficial aspects, for the slaves. That is something that is very controversial right now because the governor of Florida has arranged for that to be put in educational guidelines to be included in the history books. Seems obvious. We know slavery was what slavery was, and it's unimaginably awful. On the other hand, many of those ex-slaves all but starved to death after slavery was ended because they had no way to earn an income. And actually, there was some research done at the University of Chicago that many slaves ate better and were more likely to get medical care than the same people after slavery was eliminated. If I went and said slavery did in fact have some beneficial effects, because a slave was worth something, they almost always were fed. That didn't necessarily happen in Alabama and Mississippi when they were no longer slaves. Is that hateful speech?
It's certainly a very improper characterization, Dave. I mean, those folks would never have had the problem had they not been kidnapped and brought over here as slaves in the very first place. So, I mean, to posit that whole scenario to me is patently absurd and ridiculous. To talk about post-slavery, you know, were they better off as slaves as opposed to post-slavery? I mean, that's crazy.
Well, which is why it's absolutely necessary to put it in context, because otherwise it can be very offensive.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it untrue. The guy who did it was a very respected economist at Chicago who happened to have a black wife.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's no excuse. That doesn't give him a pass.
According to a mutual friend back in the day, he absolutely was anti-racist, but he was pro-fact.
Mm-hmm.
And he could use that to explaining how Reconstruction was so badly handled that it didn't give out 40 acres or a mule, or even guarantee to the freed slaves the food they need to live on.
Mm-hmm.
So context is everything there.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put that kind of context into an AI program. I don't think anybody else does.
Yeah, clearly not. Okay, we're going to take a break here, Dave, and come back and talk some more about this issue and AI in particular. You're listening to Community Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break.
Pois as águas, elas fecham o verão. É pau, é pedra, é o fim do caminho. É um resto de toco, é um pouco sozinho. É um caco de vidro, é a vida, é o sol. É a noite, é a morte, é o laço, é o anzol. É peroba do campo, nó da madeira. Cainga, candeia, é uma tita pereira. É madeira de vento, tombo da ribanceira. É o mistério profundo, é o queira ou não queira. É o vento ventando, é o fim da ladeira. É a viga, é o vão, festa da cumieira. É a chuva chovendo, é conversa ribeira das águas de março. É o fim da canseira, é o pé, é o chão, é a marcha estradeira. Passarinho na mão, pedra de atiradeira. Uma ave no céu, uma ave no chão. É um regato, é uma fonte, é um pedaço de pão. É o fundo do poço, é o fim do caminho. No rosto desgosto, é um pouco sozinho. É um estrepe, é um prego, é uma ponta, é um ponto. É um pingo pingando, é uma conta, é um conto. É um peixe, é um gesto, é uma prata brilhando. É a luz da manhã, é o tijolo chegando. É a lenha, é o dia, é o fim da picada. É a garrafa de cana, o estilhaço na estrada. É o projeto da casa, é o corpo na cama. É o carro guiçado, é a lama, é a lama. É um passo, é uma ponte, é um sapo, é uma rã. É um resto de mato na luz da as águas de março fechando o verão. É a promessa de vida no teu coração. É pau, é pedra, é o fim do caminho. É um resto de toco, é um pouco sozinho. É uma cobra, é um pau, é João, é José. É um espinho na mão, é um corte no pé. São as águas de março fechando o verão. É a promessa de vida no teu coração. É pau, é pedra, é o fim do caminho. É um resto de tudo, é um pouco sozinho. É um passo, é uma ponte, é um sapo, é uma rã. É um belo horizonte, é uma febre terça. São as águas de março fechando o verão. É a promessa de vida no teu coração. É pau, é pedra, é o fim do caminho. É o resto de tudo, é um pouco sozinho. É pau, é pedra, é o fim do caminho. É o resto de tudo, é um pouco sozinho. Pau, pedra, fim do caminho. Resto de tudo, pouco sozinho. Pau, pedra, fim do caminho. Resto de tudo, pouco sozinho. Preda, caminho, pouco sozinho. Pedra, caminho, pouco sozinho. Pedra, caminho, eu tô.
Okay, we're back. Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid here on WHR 90.3 FM. Dave, we want to talk a little bit more about AI, and in particular, how that is impacting the arts. What's the latest?
Well, my next story is going to point you to a remarkable imitation demo of South Park generated entirely by computer. But first, let me make clear that it goes beyond demos. Big news in Brazil. For their 70th anniversary in the country, Volkswagen commissioned a 2-minute commercial, which was a video of Elis Regina, the most popular pop singer, and her daughter, Maria Redita, singing one of Elis's most celebrated recordings, the dictatorship-era anthem, Com Nossos Pais. Elis is dead 40 years. The duet was put together by a team of animators, and it looks just fine, and it sounds just fine.
So it's visual and audio. Is that right, Dave? Video and audio.
Yep.
I mean, it's not like Nat King Cole and Natalie Cole, where they did that with audio and put out a CD. This is with video.
Actually, I'm not sure whether they used the original audio or not, but they could have, or they could have generated it, as I'll explain in a minute. Now, that's the state of the art. Right now, it's not easy to get a perfect animation, much less a perfect video of someone using AI tools. But it's getting darn close. One of the stories I'm covering this week starts with the voices of South Park creator Trey Parker and Matt Stone, portrayed by a computer running Showrunner AI. For a 22-minute South Park demo video that's on the web, it produced the story, the script, the voice recordings, the animation, the editing, and the music. That's up there. It's not perfect, but it shows that Hollywood must be afraid, very afraid. AI systems are getting better by the month, moving at a ferocious rate.
Now, Dave, isn't this technology what's fueling the strike in Hollywood, the writers' strike in Hollywood? Don't you think the AI is playing a big role in that?
I'll bring it to the show next week if you like. The Actors Guild, it's very, very angry about a proposal by the producers that for a set fee, they can shoot somebody for a day and then use that image forever in as many productions as they want. They're talking about it doing it for a crowd of extras. But Jimmy Dean's brother was talking about how they could probably do it for Jimmy Dean and reproduce his acting style.
Mm-hmm.
It's state of the art, difficult, and expensive to do it well now, beyond voice. Voice works fine. But it's going to be there, and it's one of the big issues in the strike. The writers hired, of all things, a director as their special consultant about this. One of the Hollywood directors wasn't sure what she was going to do with her life, and in middle age went back and got a degree in computer science from UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a good interview with the Hollywood Reporter with her about how, yes, everybody in Hollywood has to know this is happening and will happen.
Mm. So Dave, it's happening not just with the actors who you say, might have to license their image and their voice forever in order to get work. And then, the AI algorithms and software can cast them in a movie, if you will, or whatever, and make them be whatever character they want. But it's also happening with the writers. Now, isn't it also true that AI, as it evolves, is going to be perhaps capable of writing some of the stuff? The example that you gave with South Park, I mean, there's a writing element to that, was there not?
That was in South Park, and it is even more dramatic in real life. My partner, Jenny Bourne, has to do a short promo video. She wanted to get some ideas on what should go in. So she went to ChatGPT, or I went to ChatGPT for her, but it's becoming easy for anybody to do, and came up with an outline of what her promo video should be. The outline was so good, the client accepted it with almost no.
Thank you very much.
Now she's got to go and produce it. And ChatGPT didn't understand at all what was easy to produce and what would be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that outline was sent to the client. Jenny made a few changes, and they loved it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that good, and it's getting better.
So that's creative writing, Dave, or even creative development. Did they develop the program that Jenny was talking about? I mean, that sounds like some real depth.
You have to put into the prompt a lot of direction.
Okay.
Prompt engineer is now a new profession that's growing very rapidly. Because to get what you want out of this AI, you have to put the instructions in the prompt. We could do a whole show on that if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I did put in saying, this has to be in this, and this has to be shown in this order.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I had to do, and it came up with the script.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, it would have been possible for ChatGPT or any of the other major AI programs to come up with a script and a storyboard, which includes pictures. Right now, none of them are able to do both text and pictures at the same time. You can enter one picture, but you can't do it in a long word form in anything like that. That's called multimodal AI, and they all have that in testing now. You'll see that from OpenAI, which is in Microsoft Bing, and in Google, and in a lot of others. You already can upload one picture and have that replace the prompt. Say, tell me what's in this picture. And I may just do that. I've got some plants that I didn't mark just what they were. And I may take a few leaves of it, take a photo with my camera and upload it and see if ChatGPT or Google can take that image and tell me what plant I have growing in the corner. Probably can. The software can do that. I don't know whether the large language models can.
So now, Dave, what's your take on, a couple years down the road, and the writers that are on strike got to be thinking about this. Where are you going to be if you are a professional screenwriter, professional writer for television or other media, and you've got this AI instruments that may down the road, maybe sooner rather than later, be able to really do everything that you do. I mean, where's that going?
I will guarantee you many of the professional writers either were or were about to do a first draft of their work by asking ChatGPT for directions and maybe even draft summary. It's good enough to do that now. It's not good enough or even close to good enough to be, well, maybe the stuff that they have at showrunner is good enough, but none of the major models are close.
I'm putting myself on the other side of the equation. Say I'm a producer and I don't want to pay a writer. I don't want to give the writer any royalties or any credits. AI, write a sci-fi story for me that has this element and that element and that element. A couple years down the road, isn't the software going to be able to do that?
It's going to be able to do it, but it's probably going to be pretty lousy. So what they'll probably do is, instead of paying, say, $50,000 to a writer to come up with a draft script, they'll find a writer who, using the AI for a lot of the work, then cleans it up and polishes it and gets it right and only charges $10,000.
Yeah.
So that would be the intermediate stage. Does a professional quality script in 5 or 10 years? Well, there's a good chance that in many ways the AI will be smarter than we are in 5 or 10 years. That's a whole nother discussion.
So now, Dave, I have not been following the details of the strike. As I understand it, it's both a writer strike and an actor strike. Is AI clearly playing a role in that, or is that tangential?
The head of the negotiating committee for the actors union, I think her name's Fran Drescher, she's was a nanny, said exactly that very publicly. That's one of the things they have to do something about.
Right.
Another actor said, well, how do you negotiate? How do the writers manage to get a decent contract? And he said that the only way they get a decent contract as writers or actors is by having some leverage. And he thinks this is the last negotiation where the actors will have much leverage, because when the contract expires in 5 years, the AI will probably be so good you can look at an actor and say, I can take Marlon Brando and Udo Valentino and Jimmy Dean and put them and Charlie Chaplin and put together someone who looks like Udo Valentino, can act like Marlon Brando, and can walk like Charlie Chaplin. Why the heck should I be paying you that kind of money? That is going to happen. Whether that happens in 3 years or in 20 years, we don't know for sure. But that's where it's going.
Yeah. Wow. So, our grandkids, our great grandkids, their entertainment, their media is going to be bot generated, and it's one thing to have the entertainment bot generated, AI generated. The part that really concerns me is the so-called news reporting and how that's going to be impacted with this technology. And pretty soon we're not going to be able to tell the difference between fact and fantasy, real and and synthetic simulation created by a program. And that's going to have some pretty serious impacts for democracy and how the world goes around.
Well, I can tell you that what I just read you, the South Park story, I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
I went to court too and said, correct and check this for me. And it made 2 minor changes, one of which I left out because I didn't think it was such a good idea. But I now am putting almost all, including the next 2 stories I'm going to give you, through an AI. Claude 2 is the easiest and friendliest to use, incidentally, so I use it for this instead of ChatGPT. And the next 2 stories, I did the same thing. Now, in this case, it didn't make many changes in my story. But in something else that I was doing, I had a long article that I want to put into not a short news item, but into a full article of mine. Then I went up there and I said, summarize this. And I used that summary to start writing my article. I wrote the first paragraph myself. I corrected the summary, but most of it was pretty good and pretty usable. That's today.
Mm-hmm.
And
this stuff is moving so fast, David. You say you don't know 2 or 20 years. I think this stuff is going to it's moving at a rapid, incredible pace. I think in 5 years, the landscape is going to be dramatically changed.
Well, let me talk some about a little bit.
Okay, we got about 2 minutes, so give us the
I'll
short
make it
version.
Actually, these were designed to work in less than a minute, so let me go for it. First, I count 13 large language models already in live production and expect at least as many more the next year. Several new models will run on the G42 cloud, which is building 9 Cerebras data centers, each of which has 29 million processors or AI cores on some huge 12-inch size chips. One of those data centers will be in G42's home country. Where do you think G42 comes from? You're not going to get Abu Dhabi.
Okay, really?
And this is what's happening. China already has at least 3 large models in high volume production and at least 3 more under development. Chinese tech giants, China Mobile and China Telecom, are constructing 2 of the world's largest data centers. China is investing hundreds of billions, hoping to match and surpass the US in AI. Peking University and Shanghai Jinkang published more papers on AI than any other universities in the world. Tsinghua University and Microsoft China recently published a paper on retentive networks, claiming dramatically faster performance compared to the transformers used today in all the big models. If that's confirmed, it's going to be one of the most important AI advances in years. You can't keep up on this stuff if you just do it. Another very short item. There were all these news stories that discovered Apple has built a model, which informally is called Apple GPT and is being tested by Apple workers inside the company. The news reports all said, Apple's going to compete with ChatGPT. I say nonsense. Apple is going to focus on areas where they are strong and face less competition, like the iPhone. The 2024 iPhone will be able to run a version of the large language model that is a little bit smaller than the great big ones in the cloud, but works pretty well. One example that's already out there is Llama 2 from Facebook. Llama 2 13B will be able to run on the 2024 iPhone. That will get results without you being connected to the internet, much faster. I can only imagine what that's going to be capable of.
Wow.
So that's the news from AI land.
Okay.
It's important
well, thank you.
It's going to affect you. It's going to affect every actor out there.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, this has been Community and Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid, and we continue to be amazed at the scale and scope and speed of AI and how it is impacting and going to be impacting all of our lives. So stay tuned for more updates on that, as well as technology in general, on Community and Technology every Wednesday at 5 p.m. on WHCR 90.3 FM, 5 p.m. Just might learn something. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.